Come on, Charlie. Tell us how you're doing it. Come on, man. How are you calling in those bulls? I can't do it, dude.
Yeti, bloody Yeti.
Cut sleeves shut. Is that like a wife beater?
No, not quite.
Is it just you cut the sleeves off?
It's more redneck instead of white trash. So the
Someday
sleeves are
I
just-
hope to be a redneck.
The sleeves are just
Hello, alright, you're listening to the Gritty Bowman, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Hey, this is Corey Jacobsen, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
We born and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to the Gritty Bowman.
There you go.
I'm Casey,
And I'm Jordan,
and you're watching
the Gritty Bowman.
The cameraman already found it. Set up
And the camera's
camera.
on a slider or a boom
Yeah,
or something,
totally.
and that was fake.
Right.
A bit of that was
Right,
fake.
right.
And so when you see somebody do something similar, you're like, that was fake. Again, the celebration part of it, somebody who doesn't want to smile is annoyed when somebody smiles. Somebody who smiles is annoyed when they don't. And so it's, if somebody doesn't do it exactly like we do, I think we're insecure and we're like, oh, they're doing it wrong. I think we're all self-elected members of the judging panel of sportsmen here.
And Isaac kills a whopper. I mean, what are you teaching Isaac when you go out? Here we are talking about ethical shot placement,
Totally.
ethical shot distance, post hunt celebration. What is it you're teaching him, and how?
So it's, if somebody doesn't do it exactly like we do, I think we're insecure and we're like, oh, they're doing it wrong.
You have these two, and then everything in between, right?
And then you have Aaron Snyder who's stone cold and just doesn't make an expression.
That's right. Like, what meets your criteria of acceptable celebrations? All right, folks, welcome back to the Gritty Bowman. I am here with Corey Jacobsen, and we are going to talk today about a number of topics. One of them we kind of touched on last week, and it was around ethical shots, and you talked about the front shot and the success you had with that shot this year.
Totally.
And we went around and around on that a little bit, and it was entertaining and interesting discussion, I think. On that note, there was I wanted to ask you the question about ethical shot distance and get your opinion on that, because Aaron Snyder and I just discussed that, and I just wanted to kind of ask you the same thing that I kind of threw out there with Aaron. And we kind of talked about this a little bit offline after I had that podcast with Aaron. And let's say, Corey, you're out in the wilderness, you just paid, let's say, $20,000 to go hunt sheep in Alaska. You're not a rich man, and this is a big investment, you know.
I was going to say that you lost me at 20,000, but we'll pretend that that's happened.
On. It's just chump change. So there you are. Your family hates you because you spent $20,000 on a sheep hunt, and they have no shoes. Anyway, so you're in Alaska, and you've been there, let's say, 14 days. You've worked really hard. It's the last day of the hunt. It's evening. The light's going down. Sun's going down. There's a sheep at the end of your shooting range. The same scenario on day 7 of the hunt that you passed on. Do you take that shot now?
You know, there's a couple things that you mentioned there. One of them, you said it's at the end of my shot range. So if it's inside my shot range, that shot's happening on day 7 or day 14. That's not going to change that. Let's say it's just outside my shot range. Day 14, does your range get extended because it's day 14? I think is maybe a better way to look at it. And my answer is no, it can't. That is my range. I know my range, and that's because I've practiced all summer with it. I know where my accuracy drops off. I know where it goes from being a solid shot to being a questionable shot, where there's a lot more of a factor of error, a margin of error there. So, if you're willing to compromise your own personal ethics, your own personal range on the last day in the hopes of creating success, that's borderline or maybe even over the border of desperation. You can't. There are definitely situations that dictate different shot distances, shot angles, all of those things. We can't just put a blanket on that. As hunters, we've got to be comfortable and confident in it. But if you're not confident on day 7, I don't know what's going to make you more confident on day 14. It sounds like desperation is maybe playing a little bit more into that than confidence. And so my shot range doesn't get extended on the last day of the hunt.
Now, I think sometimes that's easier said than done.
Totally.
You're in the moment, and like I said, that's a lot of money you've invested in going up there, and to walk away without a sheep is pretty hard to do. How do you stick to those ethics?
How do I cope with failure?
Yeah, I mean, how do you how do you not how do you stay true to your values, your standards?
And I think that comes down to integrity. I mean, that's doing what's right when no one's watching. And, I don't have to come back and tell anybody I shot this elk at 90 yards or at 130 yards or whatever crazy ethical distance we want to talk about. I don't have to share that. And I don't. When I share stories about hunts, I don't share shot distances unless they're super close, like 7 yards, and that's pretty cool. But shot distances, scores, things like that are just, they're quantitative. They're things that people can compare themselves to or their situation to. And pretty soon that creates a competitive environment where everybody is now attacking each other. And so I leave those details out. And it's up to me. It's not, I'm not going to come back and brag that, hey, I shot this animal at 70 yards. I'm so cool. I saw a post on Facebook somebody made. They said something like, 90-yard shot, amazing, into the hunt or something, and the animal's laying there with an arrow stuck in its head. They did not aim for the head at 90 yards. They hit it in the head, and they got a lucky outcome. But now they're not only bragging about these horrible pictures that paint a pretty bad picture for sportsmen, but they're also bragging about the distance, the unethical distance that they shot at. And obviously they were way off their mark. So, leaving those details out, I think, take it or leave it.
That's interesting. Leaving those details out would certainly keep that competition out as well, which I think is a big problem in the hunting industry in general, that there's so much comparison, even between, gear and who wears what camo pattern, and who there's so much comparing, and I think striving for something better all the time, pushing our limits, learning, that's good. Friendly competition, I'm fine with that, but
absolutely.
But I think sometimes, like you said, when you start sharing a lot of those details, you do maybe more harm than good. At the same time, though, I don't want to. Let's say I'm a really good archer, and a 70-yard shot is something I feel really good about, especially understanding animal behavior and the distances I'm shooting. And I spend a year round. I shoot 3D all the time. I go to tournaments, and I shoot that distance. What I don't want to see is the opposite happen, where guys don't share. Everyone pretends that they only take a 20-yard shot.
Sure.
And I feel like that happens sometimes too.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to it there. And ultimately, hunting has to be a personal quest. I mean, I'm not out there to impress anyone with my shooting abilities or the size of the animals I shoot. I'm there to fulfill my own goals and satisfaction and purposes. And when it becomes that competition, there's not going to be a winner. We aren't going to keep up. There's always going to be somebody ahead or behind that we're going to be able to compare to. And so I just think it's so important to figure out what works for you, figure out what your style of hunting is, figure out what your own ethical distance and where your accuracy is and where it tapers, and stick to it. And that's personal integrity at that point. And, basically it comes down to me. I'm not there to hunt for someone else or to compare myself to someone else. It comes down to my purposes, my goals, my satisfaction in the hunt. And when we start making it a competition between us and someone else, there's not ever going to be a winner. There's not a true winner there. So
let's say you see a lot of criticism on social media for shots taken or things that other guys do. One thing that has been in the media a lot, I think, is there's a big difference between how some guys handle the celebration after an animal is killed, and some who some are like, they're really deeply offended if someone is smiling and excited over the animal they've just harvested. Really can't stand it. See it as a severe sign of disrespect, and then you have the other guys who are very crying, and emotional and distraught over the animal they killed, and you have these two, and then everything in between, right?
And then you have Aaron Snyder, who's stone cold and just doesn't make an expression.
That's right, like Billy, tough guy, just sits there and seems heartless, like a killer veteran.
Exactly. No, I look at a picture of Aaron next to an animal. I have to find the weapon just because he looks like he may have killed it with his bare hands in most of the pictures.
Yeah, definitely. And Aaron is one of those people that it annoys him to have someone. I mean, somewhat annoying, I think, for if it doesn't come across as genuine.
Right.
Of course. And we kind of have, that meter going, right? Like, it's hard to tell necessarily if someone's genuine or not genuine when they are showing some emotion over that. And so there's certainly
I think we're all self-elected members of the judging panel of sportsmen here, and it's really easy to look at a picture and analyze, oh man, he made a bad shot, he shouldn't have shot at that angle, it's a little animal, it's smaller than what I would have shot, it's he's smiling too big, he's smiling too big, it's just all of those things. As sportsmen, we're very critical of one another, and again, the celebration part of it. Somebody who doesn't want to smile is annoyed when somebody smiles. Somebody who smiles is annoyed when they don't. And so if somebody doesn't do it exactly like we do, I think we're insecure and we're like, oh, they're doing it wrong.
So Corey, what is your definition in your mind? What makes a post-celebration action a good one?
Acceptable.
Yeah. What meets your criteria of acceptable celebrations?
You said it already, but it's genuine. It has to be genuine. And I don't care what it is, it's my reaction's different on every hunt.
Yeah.
My reaction for my own hunts, my children's hunts I'm with other people, it's different. And I think it's situational, but it's always genuine.
Yeah.
It's not, the acting.
The thing is I heard Steven Ranella on a podcast a while ago when he was talking about, I think it was a podcast, maybe it was a book, but I heard him talking about fishing.
Yeah.
And he was saying that when he was out there fishing and he's got his little fly out there, and when the fish swims up to the fly, he's like, oh yeah, good fish. Oh, you're good fish. And the fish bites it. He's like, yeah, what a great fish. And he reels it in. He's like, look at this fish. Well, when the fish comes up and doesn't bite the hook and swims off, he's like, you stupid son of a, you're the worst fish. Like, there's severe hatred, right?
Yep.
And then it's this, dude, I'm just gonna kill that sucker. Bite that hook, and he's really pushing. Like, it becomes this, like, really like, what do you call it? Antagonistic sort of exchange, right, between you and this
the fish is
animal.
Not your friend.
Right, it's not cooperating. All of a sudden, you hate it because he's smarter.
Yep.
And I find that when I'm hunting elk and I'm out there and I'm bugling in this bull and everything, and it cooperates just like I wanted, and I harvest the bull, I'm like, that elk, I have a lot more compassion for it, and it's funny because I relate to Steve because, let's say the animal evades me. I got to climb a mountain. I got to cut it off. I got to run down the other side. I got to try to bugle him in. I've worked all day, and finally I shoot him. I'm just like, that sucker, he deserved to die, because he made me work so hard, right? It's like my feelings for the animal completely shift a little bit.
Totally.
And it's kind of ridiculous because it's all in my own head, but I feel that sort of, like you said, a different emotion for different animals at different times, kind of where I'm at in my space in my head, But I think what's critical is that it's genuine, that it's honest.
Well, and I think, you nailed it there. The hunt itself, I think, determines our celebration. First day, and we get there, it might be like, wow, that happened fast. More shocked than anything. But if it's on the 8th day of an 8-day hunt on the last evening, the quote of the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph, that comes out in the celebration.
Yeah.
And it does. And my wife gives me about my post-kill celebration, because sometimes I'm very, level, very metered and keep it under control. Other times, though, it comes down to all that. You just want to make it happen, and it finally happens, and it comes out. And, she gives me a hard time and says, you get more excited about hunting than when your kids, score a basket at a basketball game or something. You sit there stone cold during all of their activities, but you go hunting, and who is this person? I never see you act like this at home.
Yeah.
But it does. It comes down, I think, if people can feel that genuineness, that they say, this is a person's first animal that they've ever killed, show some excitement, be excited. Or this person's been hunting for 30 years and he still gets, wound up and excited about it and loves it, loves the thrill of it. It's the ones that I see forcing the celebration for social media, for video, things like that. And I think that's where it really gets under my skin and annoys me, that you can tell. You can tell when something's been staged, when it's been reenacted, whether that's a part of the hunt or the celebration. If they're doing it for show.
Yeah. I agree. People have a meter, a lie detector, and
Totally.
And it's a little stronger than others, but you can see when it feels genuine, when it doesn't. And
yeah. It comes back to the old school video, and there's still some of it out there, but the camera angle where they're behind the animal, they got a camera behind the elk and the person's sneaking along, and all of a sudden they look up and act surprised and then try to celebrate. And it's like, that was fake.
Right.
Every bit of that was fake.
Right.
And so when you see somebody do something similar, you're like, that was fake.
Or when they're walking up trying to find the elk and the camera's set up right behind the horns, and there it is, and he runs over there. It's like, the cameraman already found it.
And the camera's on a slider or a boom or something, totally. And there's a whole production there going on.
It just isn't real. So I think that's really a really important thing. And I like I said earlier, I've had a range of emotions, and sometimes I remember shooting this elk and going, I wasted him. Oh yeah, And then another time I shot an elk and I was like, really, somewhat even sad about it. Like, I killed another animal, and it was just, I was just thinking about it, and it just weighed on me a little bit more. And those are both genuine emotions.
Totally.
I experienced them both. And I'm out here hunting blacktails out at the place I grew up since I was a little kid. And I've been after this one blacktail this is the 4th year. And I've done this before, where I've kind of gotten to know an animal by watching it, tracking it, trying to figure it out, analyzing its behavior year after year. He outsmarts me constantly, and I keep trying. and it gets to be a little bit obsessive. But once I do, get that animal, which I have in the past, it's been it feels like a loss, like it weighs a little more heavily when it's
bittersweet for sure.
Yeah. So now on another topic, you hunted recently with your son, Isaac, and again this year, and Isaac kills a whopper. I mean, bigger bull than I've ever shot. So, how important is it to you? What are you teaching Isaac when you go out? Here we are talking about ethical shot placement,
Totally.
ethical shot distance, post hunt celebration. What is it you're teaching him, and how?
And it's our actions speak pretty loud. There's a quote, your actions are speaking so loudly I can't hear your words. And they see it, they learn it, they absorb it. And he's 12. I took him out this year. We had a great time. We went out archery hunting, and we got 24 hours to archery hunt, and then got a little bit longer than that for the rifle hunt. But ethical shot distances, he shot all summer with us. He shot the adult ranges at the 3D shoots. He's doing really well. I mean, out to 50, 60 yards, he's hitting vitals, but it's not consistent. And I watched it. 30 yards, he's good. I move him to 35, and his accuracy goes down. So I told him, buddy, your range is 30 yards. You can't shoot 31. You can use your 30-yard pin to shoot 30, but anything over that, you've got to let it go. And really push that in his practicing and everything. And so we got out. Isaac was at full draw 6 times in a 24-hour period on 6-point bulls archery hunting. Best evening archery hunt I've probably ever been on, and he's 12 years old and gets to experience that. But he had a 320-inch 6-point standing at 18 yards broadside, and he was at full draw and didn't shoot. Now this one is kind of a funny story and throws him under the bus a little, but I'd sent him down to set up, and I moved back to call. And I said, take my rangefinder, range some landmarks, get down there, make sure you have good shooting lanes, and then I'll do the rest. You just draw back and shoot when the bull comes in. So I get back, and I'm raking a tree and calling, and the bull's coming up the hill. And all of a sudden I see Isaac get up and start walking down the hill, and I'm thinking, rookie mistake, he's moving, he's going to blow the elk out of there. I'm all frustrated, thinking we're never going to get an elk. We only have one day to hunt here. And so anyways, the elk comes in, I can tell it's close. I see him at full draw, which if you've not had the opportunity to stand behind your child when they're at full draw on an elk, I've been with him when he shot one with a rifle. Seeing him at full draw with his bow on an elk that I know is standing really close, that was something special.
Wow.
But so he's at full draw, he comes to full
imagine.
draw again, it leaves, another bull comes in, he comes to full draw on it. Finally, I can't take it anymore, so I go down there, I'm like, Bud, what's going on? He's like, I was so close. That big bull was right there, but it was just a little too far. And I'm thinking, too far? And he's like, yeah, it was 33 yards. I said, buddy, there's no way. That tree is 18 yards. And he's like,
He walked forward.
He ranged it from his first setup, walked down the hill 15 yards. And when he ranged it the first time, he said, okay, this tree's 33 yards. The elk has to be in front of it to shoot it. The elk came in and was standing at the tree. He had the willpower and the strength there to say, I'm at full draw, I've got my pin on the side, but I know it's 3 yards too far and I'm not going to shoot. And it was a bull of a lifetime. It was bigger than any bull I've shot in the state of Idaho in my life.
Wow.
And he passed it up because he thought it was 3 yards. And obviously, had he shot it for 33 yards and it was 18, it would have been bad or a complete miss.
Right. But in his mind, he thought it was 33 yards, which is 3 yards over his limit.
Yep, and he didn't try to stretch it or change from that. So for me as a father, I was proud. I wanted so badly to get in a picture with him with that bull, with his bow at 12 years old, but there's no replacing what he learned on that hunt.
Yeah, wow.
So, but then to contrast it, a month later in Idaho, you get to take youth out, and if they hunted with a bow and didn't get one, if there's a rifle season in that same unit, they can hunt that as well. So we did go out rifle hunting, and again, ethical shot distances with a rifle even. We had a bull located across the draw, and Isaac set up on it, and I had forgotten my rangefinder up on the ridge with my backpack. And so I'm guessing, saying, buddy, I think it's in this range, I'm judging this tree at this distance, and it looks like it's this far past it. And he pulled up and shot and missed, and he ended up missing 2 more shots at it. And we went and got the rangefinders, and it was about double what I thought it was. So I'm good out to about 35 or 40 yards. Beyond that, I'm heavily relying on rangefinders.
Kind of a mystery.
Yeah. So we ended up getting back on that same bull later that afternoon. And fortunately, the bull was actually bugling that morning, October 22nd. And the bull was bugling on its own in this canyon. When we shot it, quit bugling and didn't make any more noise. But we followed it the rest of the day, got in the canyon where we thought it had holed up with the cows. And I let out 2 bugles and nothing happened. And so we made a decision. He wanted to go and shoot a spike that we saw. It was probably about 1,200 yards away. So we started our stalk on it and only made it about 40 yards. And I looked on the hillside right across from us, and that same 6-point from the morning had come out to investigate the bugle, and had my rangefinder then, ranged it. He pulled up on it and shot, and ended up dropping it right there within 10 feet of where he hit it. So,
Wow.
it, shot distances they're a vital part of the whole process. And I think being able to say that's too far, that's not far, whatever it is, knowing that and sticking to it is important. And we're teaching those that we hunt with, whether it's our children or a new hunting partner, we're teaching them that, and they're going to pick up on it.
I think it's neat because as I take my daughter archery just to the range to shoot her bow, and she shoots with me in my basement because I got a target down here, and then we went hunting a few times this year together, elk hunting. When I hunt with my daughter, there's so much one-on-one time with Dad, and time for us to kind of unplug from a lot of things, and just have that bond together. And it's a time for me to really teach her what Dad knows and what Dad thinks. And like you said, I can talk all I want, but it's really, what does Dad do? How does Dad act? How does he treat other people? How does he treat the animals in the wilderness he's in? And I think that's when you talk ethics, it's really easy to, it's a lot easier to figure out when your child is there, who you want to be as a man.
Yeah.
And
you see it in them, and that's, probably one of the most frustrating things as a parent that I've found is seeing attributes in my children that I don't like about myself. And that frustrates when I see them do something that I know is wrong. It's pretty embarrassing to realize they learned it from me. And, it's hard to come down on them and say, you can't do that. It's do as I say, not as I do. Well, that doesn't work too good. They're going to do as you do.
Yeah.
And, whether it's celebration, shot distances, whatever it is, we're teaching them.
We are. Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you some more questions about your hunts this year. You spent some time in Montana as well. You went to Wyoming, and then you went to Montana. How did your hunt in Montana go?
It was a good hunt. As I'm getting a little older, there's a little bit more, I don't know if wisdom or experience or what's coming into play, but I'm learning to enjoy the adventure and not just the final outcome. That's probably a really good lead into me saying I failed to fill my tag there, but I hunted with Randy Newberg from Fresh Tracks with Randy Newberg. Randy's a great friend, and we share a lot of similar views, and it was just a great time. We had a wonderful time. Randy's a great guy, great champion for conservation, and just a wonderful sportsman in general. But we hunted 6 days in Montana. We hunted an area that was very heavily hunted for the number of elk that were there. Predators were crazy. We heard wolves howl. We saw fresh grizzly tracks pretty much every time we turned around. And the elk, they showed that. They were very wary, and it was tough hunting. Very few elk. I think we saw like 11 elk the entire week. But with that, I had opportunities and passed on some, and others that just didn't quite work out. But we had a great time, and I came home with my tag still, and actually talked to Randy last week, and if it works out, we may try to make it out a day or two with a rifle in hand here in another 2 or 3 weeks.
That's neat. Yeah, Randy, I'm a huge fan of Randy Newberg. I listen to all of his Hunt Talk radio podcasts, and that's pretty neat to go hunting with Randy.
Absolutely.
Is he as spicy in person? He seems a little feisty, and he's not too shy about his opinions, and he can get riled up. Is he like that all the time, pretty much?
Yeah, we share the same sentiment on most things, so we didn't have a chance to really debate things. There's nothing that I've seen that will get him fired up like a ruffed grouse.
What?
I swear, I figured out by the end of the week, the reason he invited me to hunt with him in Montana was so that he'd have somebody carrying around protection for grizzly bears and someone to carry all of the grouse back to the truck for him, because that guy, if we even heard something that sounded like a grouse thumping or flapping its wings, he was gone for an hour in the brush trying to track that thing down.
Interesting.
Yeah, he blamed it on his wife and said that if he came home without a grouse and she found out he'd let one get away, he would be in the doghouse. And there may be some truth to that, but he took it very literal and seriously.
Cool. Well, I like me some grouse too.
Absolutely.
Ben shot a couple, and we ate them in camp, and it's good eating.
Yeah.
You know, real good.
Yeah, this year both Wyoming and Montana were probably the best years I've seen in a long time for numbers of grouse. So
Really?
we ate plenty of grouse this year.
So, on that note, what's your plans for next year? You know, off of what you experienced this year, what's your takeaways, and what is it that you want to do next year differently, or what are you going to take away from this season?
Yeah, you know, I don't know that I ever come up with one big solid takeaway like, oh, I've got to do this. I think I make mental notes throughout the season of, I'm not in good enough shape, I need to hit that a little harder, or, you know, I really need to be more comfortable with my bow, or this piece of gear isn't working. And, you know, those mental notes are taken, and I just implement that throughout the year. If there's one thing, though, I think that Wyoming and Montana both taught me, maybe on opposite ends of the spectrum, you have to hunt where there's elk. And so just whether that's, you know, hoping to draw a quality tag or spending more time scouting. And, you know, after 30-some years of elk hunting, you'd think that a guy would have a few hot spots figured out, but they seem to cycle through. You know, areas that are good one year aren't necessarily good the next year, but I've got my comfort areas dialed in, and I think that's going to be more of my focus, is just hitting those areas that I know I'm going to have a good hunt, a fun hunt. I don't focus on trophy quality on the big bulls. For me, that's not what makes the hunt successful. Don't get me wrong, I love shooting big elk, and I'm going to shoot the biggest one I can every year, but I'd rather go to an area that has no hunting pressure and 6 or 8 bulls in a basin bugling. If the big one's a 280, 290 inch 6-point bull, I'm going to be ecstatic when I connect with him. So for me, it's just finding that area and not wasting time in the areas that don't produce.
We ran into a lot of hunting pressure this year, in especially Oregon. Oregon was out of control. I think a lot of that just had to do with all the fires.
Yeah.
It just pushed. Just a lot of habitat was lost, and
areas closed, and so people get concentrated.
And I mean, it was like a parking lot in the wilderness. I mean, there were a ton of people out there. So Oregon was tough. Idaho was better, but we still ran into a lot of people on public land, and we just had to work around them. That is something that I think I still encourage guys that are wanting to come out west, you know, to grab a backpack, you know, or just, you know, come on out here. There's a lot of opportunities, and even a bad elk hunt is still a good elk hunt. I mean, I feel like there's if you put in 7 days, at least once in that 7 days, it's real hard not to have an encounter with elk in most over-the-counter units in the States.
And after day 3, if you aren't having that, you know, it comes back to that not getting stuck in the rut. Go somewhere else, relocate, whether it's 3 miles, 10 miles, 30 miles. But yeah, if you aren't having an experience after 3 days, go and find that experience somewhere else.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say though is when you talk about finding elk, going to an area where there are elk, that's critical, right? I mean, it's the same for any animal you're hunting. Go where there's animals. If they're not there, you could spend a lot of time wasted time. But how do you get into those areas where there's animals? How do you find them? I'll share what we do. We typically look at success rates in different states and different units. We analyze those success rates. If there's a pretty high success rate unit in Idaho or Colorado or wherever, and it's like 20% or 25%, we kind of dial in on those units because that's really high for an archery archery unit. We figure that we're good enough hunters that with enough experience hunting elk that if we're in a unit where 1 out of 4 guys tags out, odds are we can too.
Yeah.
So we try to target those units more than the units with a 7% or 5% success rate. It's really tough when not even 1 out of 10 guys can kill an elk in a unit, and so finding units, that's one way we can find those units with that where we have a better chance of success, and that's one thing that we do. The other thing is we just apply to units that are harder to get. But we typically don't apply to units that are going to take us 15 years to draw.
Right.
We're applying for units that we can get with, 3 to 5 years, sometimes 7-year plan. And in, you got 5 Western states with elk, and we have a plan for each one, and the certain units and certain number of points we're targeting. And, at first it was funny when we first started doing this, Anthony and Ben and I, we put in our tags each year. We would analyze the states, and we'd use Huntin' Fool or some other publication or tool like Go Hunt or whatever to try to find those units that we want to target. But it was for like 7 years we put in for all these units, and then all of a sudden we got to a point where we started drawing. We could draw some of those every year for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
Now there was a 7-year drought where we didn't draw hardly anything. You just put in your time. But then all of a sudden it was like, well, this year we're going to Arizona. This year we're going to Wyoming. This year we're going to go to this nice unit in Oregon, and the quality of hunt in those draw units. Think about it; those are managed for a better hunter experience.
Right.
And that's what the states are doing. And so when you can draw one of those tags, the odds of your success just go way up. So we kind of put a tag strategy in place for all those different units, and we cycle through them. And then there's always years where we don't draw, or we don't want to draw that year because of other family or personal obligations. And so we have some over-the-counter places that we have in our back pocket.
Definitely. Yeah, and we're similar. I've drawn tags from, 10 to 12 points and tags with 1 to 3 points, and it just kind of depends, but that's all part of the strategy. And state by state's different. I drew a hunt in Oregon that took 10 points that was probably equivalent to an over-the-counter hunt in Montana or Wyoming. I drew a tag in Arizona with 3 points that, I think most people would have paid a lot of money to have the opportunity to draw that tag. So points are, they're a little bit misleading sometimes depending on the state. You look at it, you can't compare a 10-point unit in Arizona to one in Oregon. But yeah, I have the same thing. I have a stockpile of points in different states, and I'm just chasing, like everyone else, trying to catch up to where I can draw a decent tag. But outside of that, just the general tags. Wyoming's a general tag. You do have to apply for it, and it takes points to draw it, but you can draw it every 2 years or so, the general tag there. Montana has leftover tags on their general license. Idaho, you can buy over the counter. Colorado, you can buy over the counter. Oregon, you can buy over the counter. New Mexico has no bonus points. So there are all these opportunities to go hunting. And yes, we put in for the hard to draw hunts, but if we don't get them, there's no way we're sitting at home waiting until next year.
Yeah. I just did a podcast with my Uncle Kevin at High Point Outfitters, and we talked about, Arizona tag strategies. And I decided a long time ago I would rather hunt 3 times in a 20-year period than once in a 20-year period.
And kill 3 bulls, 320-inch bulls rather than 1 360-inch bull, or, throwing those numbers out there. But, yeah, I would rather have 3 above average hunts than 1 stellar hunt.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are on the other end. They would rather wait 20 years and have that one chance at killing a once-in-a-lifetime bull, and that's great. That's
You got to decide.
Works.
You got to decide what you want for you. But that's where I come from. I wanted more hunter opportunities, and I will say that the hunt I drew in Arizona didn't take that many years to draw it, and it crushed the units here in Oregon that took 14 points to draw.
Yeah.
And
as a resident.
as a resident, yeah. So I look at that and I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there for drawing a tag that if you just look a little harder, you can find.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and put in that
It always
time.
amazed me, that we'd go to shows and do seminars and stuff in Arizona, and people would come up and we'd be asking them, they'd come to the booth and they'd look at the product and have no desire to buy anything, and it was always the same story. Maybe if I ever draw my tag, I'll think about buying a knife, or I can get serious about a rangefinder or something. You can drive just about any direction from there and be hunting every year, and they're putting all of their eggs in that basket, waiting until they draw their tag after 20 years to go on one elk hunt with no previous experience. And I think just having that experience is so important that, if you can get a tag every year, do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, takeaway this year then is finding a place where there's elk.
Yeah, I think we know those places. I think it's just more focusing in on the places we know consistently hold elk, and whether that's state, whether that's unit, whether that's drainage, just being in areas where there are elk, so we aren't wasting 4 or 5 days just trying to find elk, just trying to find elk to hunt, and then only having a couple days. If we can show up and go hunting from day one, we're gonna have a better experience.
So on the calling thing, how did your calling go this year? Did you change anything up, or was it pretty much the same thing that you normally do?
Pretty much the same thing. I'm in a rut in that aspect, but yeah, didn't really learn anything new as far as any new tricks or tactics or anything. Just kind of that same strategy we've been using. So
are you guys? You're pretty much calling an elk in nearly every setup you guys have. Are you spotting? You're not spotting and stalking that much.
Okay, I had to say, I wish we were calling elk into every setup.
No, I mean
but yes, that's our 95% of the time. That's our strategy.
And so, do you think you're successful because you call well, or more successful just because you're persistent at it? I mean, which is it? Or is it the same?
I think it's a combination, and I don't think it has a lot to do with the quality of calling. I think it's just knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and that doesn't involve necessarily quality. Yeah, there are a few points you want to hit. You want to hit that high note. You want to make it sound clear. You want to put aggression and emotion into it. But, there are guys that don't sound very good that are equally as successful or more successful than our group is, just because they know what they're doing. And so I think it's just that whole puzzle. It's like a big pie. Every piece that you put into that pie is going to make you more successful. And if that's calling is one piece of it, but then understanding, just basic elk knowledge, physical conditioning, all those different things add up. Calling is just one more, maybe, arrow in the quiver.
I think what I found this year that I probably focused on a little more, and it just made it really simple, and that was just to put a little more emotion into the call. Yeah. It's pretty easy to sort of just bugle. Yeah. Bugle, get all the technicalities right and stuff like that. But even when I play back the film on some of this stuff that we did, and myself or Anthony or we're bugling, you can tell when there's emotion behind it, and when there's just like execution.
You can tell when an elk puts emotion into it. You can tell when an elk's bedded. You can tell when they're just given a straight bugle. You can tell when they're fired up. Like, you can hear it in their voice when they say, "Okay, I've had enough. I'm coming in."
Yeah,
and I think they can read that same emotion from us when we put it in our calls.
I'll tell you that's one of the coolest experiences to have, is to actually have an elk responding to you intensely. Like, you're talking to this animal. You know what I mean? It's totally. I'm not sure what I'm saying, but I'm talking to him, right?
And he's talking back.
That's right. We struggled this year getting the wind right badly, and where we were hunting for about 4 or 5 days, the wind just was really tough. it's funny, on the day that we did harvest the bull, that Ben killed his bull, the wind was just perfect all day long. I mean, just steady, one direction. We could work those bulls so much easier. It was a different area. But in the one area where we spent a lot of our time, the wind just was everywhere. And so it was really hard to call in elk because they wanted to come in, but then the wind would switch. And so playing the wind was just really tough. But I wanted to say that we used your technique where we cow called, and it's a little tempting to just go straight to that bugle and go, hey, I'm right here and stuff. But we've done that lots of times, and normally we do. And sure enough, that bull will bugle right back when we do that. But doesn't really come in necessarily. And sometimes he hangs up. Well, we got an opportunity where the wind was right. We got everything set up and dialed in, and we did that this year. And cow call. And then when he called in, like you said, there wasn't a lot of emotion behind it. It was like, hey lady, I'm over here. And when I cut him off, like, she's mine or whatever it was I said, dude, the response was,
he had emotion the next time.
Oh, it came out like, and he was mad. And Anthony was sitting there. He says it even on the podcast. He's like up on the hill, filming just up a little bit from Ben. And he said, he was sitting there going, the cows were busting out. They were further, maybe 50 yards, 100 yards below him, probably 100 yards below where he was bedded. He was up higher on the hill. And when the wind blew, it blew at an angle toward the cows, but just not toward him. So he didn't smell us, but his cows did. And his cows were blowing out of the canyon. And I'm over there cow calling, wanting to bugle because I think he's running off with the cows. But I'm like, if he smelled us, he smelled us, And so I stuck with the cow calls until he responded, and he didn't run off with the cows. I think he was kind of wondering what was going on. Wasn't sure. He heard some cows on the hill, and so when he screamed at me after I challenged him, Anthony's on the hill going, well, I don't know if he's going to come in or not. And then he heard that. He's like, oh, this bull is coming. you can hear it in their bugle. Like,
you can almost feel the air come out of them, like, ah, and you know what they mean. They don't talk to their own cows like that.
No. And then he just started coming through the trees, He bugled like once or twice more, and then just, that's it. And just came walking through. And Ben had a 40-yard shot. Somehow it didn't work out. We talked about that earlier.
No need to throw a hunting partner under the bus again.
I mean, if he were, like Anthony said, better, he would have got it done. But somehow or another, we're not sure how.
I'm not necessarily sure that if a hunting partner is better, they would necessarily get it done. But there's no doubt that somebody who's a better hunter would have got it done in that situation. So
that's right. And that's what we're striving for, is to be that guy. No, it was a really, really fun. And then later in the season, we ran into big herds of 40 cows with one bull. And that was a different hunting tactic for us. We didn't bugle much. Instead, we kind of tried to head them off, get close to them. And yet, they still let us do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
We talked about using a heads-up decoy. Last year, you talked about using it. You did an article in Extreme Elk Magazine about it, and we talked about it over the summer. Well, we were hunting wide open country, and so we brought out the decoy. Anthony had one we could mount to our bow or just kind of carry.
Yep.
And the decoy worked. When it worked, it worked.
It works perfect when it works.
Yep. And when it didn't work, it didn't work.
It didn't. And that's what I've shared before. I don't know. I can't explain it. Maybe somebody who's much more up to speed on decoys can, but for me, it's kind of that last resort. If I've bugled and done everything I can and it's not working, I'll pull out the decoy, because one time it works perfectly, the next time the elk sees it and runs. So
I looked at it this way. We're in the wide open. The elk are coming in. They're going to see us anyway.
Right.
They're going to see us. There's just no way for us to hide, right? So you pull up the decoy and you kind of stick it out there in front of your bow, and they look at the decoy and they run away. Well, they were going to run away anyway,
right?
Most likely. And the time that they looked at the decoy and then just went back to feeding at 20 yards, like, oh, just an elk. It's like, well, now that's when we got the shot, you know. So I kind of look at it as it's sort of like rattling for a big blacktail buck. In general, I don't think you're going to scare any buck away. It just may not work.
Right.
And so there's not a lot of risk in trying it. It's the same thing. There's not a lot of risk in trying the decoy when you got nothing left.
As a last resort, yeah. I would say I feel there is risk in using it if it's your first, if you step out there on that ridge and you see elk and you instantly pull the decoy out, you're 50-50 at best. And but yeah, like you said, once you've pushed everything, you've done everything you can, and your next move now is to pack up and head back up the ridge, pull the decoy out, because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it works well. Those elk will come in on a string sometimes.
And all you need is for it to work once.
Yep.
That's it. And when I chased that bull, I had the elk, a whole herd below me about 100 yards away, too far for me to shoot. And I just put I didn't even have a decoy. I just started screaming my head off with that bugle. Bugle, 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 just madder than heck. Kicked rocks, kicking rocks down the hill and screaming, ranting, waving my arms and stuff. And that whole herd just stared at me and watched me come down the hill. And I closed to like 50, 60 yards. And that bull was just scream for scream. And then, I've seen Anthony do that with elk before, where he has a horn that he rakes a tree with. And I've seen him pick that horn up and put it on his head and close 50 yards. And they just stand there while he's bugling at him, walking toward him with a horn on his head. Yep. And he'd wave it to the side or to the right. And it's pretty crazy how much to me, what it tells me is they just don't rely on their eyesight the way they do their ears and their nose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, their nose is primary. You're never going to beat their nose. And I think their eyesight is just kind of backup. If they hear a sound and don't know what it is, then they want to confirm it with their eyes. If they smell something, they don't need to confirm it, they're gone. But yeah, very rarely do they see something, and unless you're blatantly out there jumping up and down, waving your arms. But if they see movement or if they see something out of place, they're going to want to either smell it or hear it before they really decide, hey, let's leave.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of snakes.
Liar. You're
more
lying.
Snakes than I've ever seen.
You are lying.
I am not lying. I have
You
video.
are too.
I have video of all of them.
That's not true. I asked Anthony because just for the record, I've hunted that unit before. And the thing that turns me off is the number of snakes in there. At least, I've shed hunted a lot. I've been in there in September. We've had rattlesnakes crawl over our boots. It wasn't fun. And so I warned you, if you go in there, there's going to be a lot of snakes. But I already talked to Anthony, and he said, we didn't see any snakes. And Brian said he's going to lie and tell you there were a lot of them so you wouldn't go in there.
Now, wait a minute. I'm too ethical for lying.
Okay, he said Brian's going to try to deceive you into feeling that there's snakes all over in there.
Look, Corey, what I was going to say is that there were a lot of snakes, just not a lot of rattlesnakes, there's a fine line. Anthony threw a snake at me.
There's not even a fine line.
And hit me in the groin with it. And it was a bull snake, and it looked like a rattlesnake. And he grabbed it with we're climbing the hill, and he grabs it with his trekking pole, just gets it on there, and I don't see it. My head's down, and he goes, Brian, and he chucks it. And I look up, and the snake is coming right for me, and I don't know, in your mind.
You need a new hunting partner.
It looks like a rattlesnake.
You need a new hunting partner.
I audibly screamed like a girl and tried to jump to the side retardedly with like a 65-pound pack on a steep slope. Anyway, but I saw snakes probably every day.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any rattlesnakes.
That's
None.
good.
And I asked Anthony, do you ever see rattlesnakes? Because he spends a lot of time in these areas, and he's only seen a few.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't take many to change your focus from elk to snakes, and we were there in September several years ago. We were glassing elk on the hill across from us, and my hunting partner all of a sudden let out one of those audible little screams, and I looked, and there was a rattlesnake that had crawled over his boot while we were glassing. He just kind of kicked it. The rest of the day, we were not focused on elk. We were watching the ground 3 feet in front of us the entire time.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing. I couldn't help but always be conscious of a potential rattlesnake.
Yeah,
without doubt.
And it's steep country. It's thick grass, so you're walking through that tall grass.
Oh,
it's shale rocks. Every rock you step on, you're thinking there's a rattlesnake under it. And then it's so steep as you're walking up the hill. It's like if there is one on that ledge, I'm a face level with it.
Oh, completely. There were anywhere where there was a nook or cranny or a hole, I was like, I'm going to step here or I'm going to step there. I mean, you can't help it. I mean,
you end up walking 3.5 miles back to camp instead of the straight line 1 mile because you're weaving and bobbing trying to avoid rattlesnakes.
Especially when you see these rat snakes like throughout they would they were like 5 feet long, and they would just shoot out green or black, just shoot out, and you just can't help when you see that slither. You just can't help but jump 3 feet back. I think it's kind of interesting because you go south and they have like all these poisonous snakes and water moccasins and all that, and we complain about cottonmouth. We're worried about a rattlesnake,
little timber rattler,
and it's kind of like pretty benign, really, when you compare them all.
And I promise there are hundreds of people right now laughing, going, "Man, those guys are pansies." I will not go in that unit and hunt anymore because of the rattlesnakes. I'll wade through grizzly bears, I'll wade through wolves, cougars, you name it. But you throw one rattlesnake in the unit, and I'm going elsewhere.
I will admit, I normally I'm hunting higher altitude, and there's just no snakes, or just different climate rather, and so this is my first time, and when I do see a snake, it's a little garden snake, and these things were giant, and that bull snake, I stuck my GoPro in its face, and it just kept striking the lens like over and over, and those things are mean, man. That thing was aggressive.
They're aggressive.
It coiled up. It's all muscular, and I was kind of fascinated with it. Although I wanted to throw it at Anthony, I decided I shouldn't. I don't think I could pick that thing up. I mean, it was so coiled and tight and aggressive.
That's the other thing I found in September. The rattlesnakes seem to be more aggressive. I don't know if it's when they're shedding their skin or what, but I've had some encounters with aggressive snakes in September. And over where you were, I've seen rubber boas, rat snakes, bull snakes, rattlesnakes. They're all there, and if I want to see snakes, I'll go to the zoo where there's a big, thick plexiglass enclosure between me and them. And
the reality is, though, grizzlies are a lot more dangerous, I would think, than a rattlesnake.
I don't know.
I mean, it's sort of like being afraid of spiders. I mean, the reality is you're probably not going to get killed by a spider.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can ask South Cox. He got mauled by a bear. They're out there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Montana is not exactly known for lack of grizzly bears.
Yeah. It's a predator zone for sure.
How did you feel hunting among grizzly bears?
And I told Randy Newberg when I was hunting with him, I told him maybe I'm just really stupid or naive, but
I think that
I have my large bottle of pepper spray on my side. I'm completely protected, right? But no, it didn't bother me. We weren't camped out in them. We went back to a base camp every night.
You were bugling and calling.
A lot. We did a lot of bugling.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to me like that's when you call in that, 500-pound grizzly and,
Yeah, my experience has been with grizzlies, if you're hunting in an area where they are, calling them in, it can happen. You can call in wolves, you can call in cougars, all of that. I think where you get in trouble with grizzlies is either a sow with cubs that you surprise and startle, typically not because they're hunting you, but you meet up with them, or if you've got an animal down and they're coming in to claim it as their own. That's the two. Or the third one, if you're camped out there and you've got food or something at camp, they come in and get in your camp and cause problems. But
So have you been bear hunting before?
for grizzly,
Just bear hunting, period.
oh yeah, I've hunted a lot of black bear.
So, where?
Pretty much Idaho.
Idaho has some big bears.
Yeah, the unit you were in, there's some really good bears in there.
Yeah, there's a ton of bears in there. That
Yeah.
was a sweet unit. I want to go back. I saw some giants.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because I spent some time on Prince of Wales Island, and I had hunted some bear around here and in Oregon. But when I went to Prince of Wales and I shot a black bear on the island, and I saw how big it was, and the teeth and the claws, and I field dressed him, and all that, and yeah, that's when I first became afraid of bears. Like there's a before that I had this pepper spray, whatever. I felt pretty darn like they're going to run from me kind
Right.
of. But after seeing that firsthand and just the size and the speed, and I don't know, they're yes, the odds are they probably won't hurt you, but if they wanted to, the capability is so insane I got a healthier respect for bear as a result of that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, we didn't camp out there. So had we camped out there, I would have laid in my tent all night awake listening for every little sound that sounded like it could have been a bear, but where we had the comfort of going back to a base camp and not having to worry about storing food and that, it made it a lot easier, more manageable.
So have you ever hunted from a tree stand?
I have, but not for elk.
Okay. What species?
Bear primarily.
Bear.
Bear and whitetail.
And how do you like it?
That's it's just one level. I don't know if it's above or below, but gouging my eyeballs out with dull sticks. I'm the most impatient person. So, if I'm sitting there and there's 8 or 10 bears hitting a bear bait, or I have whitetail continually funneling under a tree, I can manage it. If I'm there for 30 minutes and it's cold out, though, I'm down on the ground hiking, looking for something to hunt.
I love it. I mean, I really do. I could sit there all day, every day for days. Just sit there and watch squirrels, critters, bugs. I don't know, dude. I can sit forever. Yeah, I've been hunting blacktails. I will say it didn't start out that way. In the beginning, I was cracking open a book or listening to something on my iPhone or whatever.
Right.
But it's gotten to the point, I guess, it's probably an acquired skill or interest. But
Right.
Where did that buck come from on your wall back there? That is a dandy.
He's a good one. It came from a draw unit here in Idaho, a rifle hunt. Actually passed him up opening day.
Really?
Shot him 8 days later. Yeah, funny how that works.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell me what unit it was?
Not really. No, it was a Bennett Mountain Buck, Unit 45 here in Idaho, which, you and 3,500 other people can put in for it. So.
Yeah.
But no, I drew it first time I put in back in 2001.
Really?
And, it was insane. We hunted it at the peak for that unit. It's gone downhill and come back a little bit, but we saw 120 bucks on opening day.
So, other than elk, what is your favorite species of animal to hunt?
I just like hunting, and I like the vocal interaction with animals. So I like coyote hunting. Turkey hunting's frustrating, but at least you get to vocally interact with them. Whitetail rattling for whitetail's fun. Spot and stalk mule deer late season is fun. I love bear hunting. So I don't know if I have a favorite. Elk kind of demands that top spot, and then everything else kind of fits in as the season and time allows.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a big. I can't help it. I like blacktail deer a lot, but Anthony has been hunting mule deer now for a long time since he moved to Idaho. He grew up hunting blacktail a lot, and it's his new kind of passion. He just loves spot and stalk mule deer. So they're off in Colorado right now. He and Ben, and they drew a tag out there, and hopefully they're getting it done. He's up there with my Uncle Kevin, and
cool.
They should be having a blast. So my fingers are crossed. I'm hoping they get a nice buck, and I'm hoping he gets it on film and he can tell me how awesome it is, because I got a lot of points up there. So
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think 12 or 13 points for deer and elk in Colorado, and kind of no man's land there of where do you spend them.
Well, Corey, it was great to have you on today. And thanks for taking the time to share your insight and just to chat. I really enjoyed it. So,
absolutely.
I got one more, a couple other topics I wanted to cover with you when I got a little more time to prep. So hopefully we can get you back out here on the show in a week or two again, and get Corey Jacobsen's expert opinion on some expert topics.
Oh, that was quite the teaser.
You like that? You like that?
I'm interested to see what that'll be. No, I'm always game and always have a good time, so I appreciate the invite.
It's great to visit with you, man. Thanks.
Likewise. No, thank you.
All right. Stay gritty.
All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Don't forget about our deal with Mountain Ops. Type in the word gritty at checkout and get 20% off until the end of the year. For those of you who have not seen the Full Draw Film Tour this year and want to go, check out their website for their tour schedule. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowman TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean, so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the new Elk 101 website, where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will? As always, good luck on your hunts, and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.